Okay, so picture this. I'm standing there, car keys in hand, looking at two teenagers who have just, with absolute straight faces, told me my sole purpose in their lives is to be an ATM, not a mother figure. And in that moment, something in me snapped. Not in a screaming dramatic way, but in a cold, quiet, definitive kind of way. I remember thinking, is this really my life now? I'm here pouring my heart and soul, and honestly, a significant chunk of my salary into these kids, and they see me as a walking wallet. So, I looked at them, calmly, and I said, all right then, if that's what you truly believe, then let's make it official. Was I wrong for what I did next? Tell me, honestly, if you would have done the same thing. It all started so hopefully. I met Mark 3 years ago, a wonderful, kind, charming man, a widower with 2 children, Sarah, who was 15 at the time, and Tom, 13. Their mother had passed away suddenly from an aggressive illness a couple of years before, and Mark was doing his best. But you could tell he was overwhelmed, still grieving, and struggling to manage 2 teenagers who were also clearly hurting. I fell in love with Mark quickly. He was everything I had ever wanted in a partner. Supportive, intelligent, funny, and he had this quiet strength about him that I admired. We started dating, and I made it a point to go slowly with the kids, understanding their situation. I knew blending families was tough, especially when there was a deceased parent involved. I wasn't looking to replace their mom. I just wanted to be a supportive, loving adult in their lives, to help make things easier for everyone. For the first few months, things seemed okay. Sarah was reserved, a bit moody, but I chalked that up to normal teenage angst and grief. Tom was more open, initially, and we'd even share a laugh or two. Mark was ecstatic. He'd often tell me how much my presence meant to him, how much lighter his load felt, and how he hoped the kids would eventually come around to seeing me as family. After about a year of dating, Mark and I decided to move in together. It felt like the natural next step. My apartment was smaller, and his house had more space, a backyard for his dog, and was in a better school district for the kids. I sold my place, put the money into a joint account with Mark for house renovations and future plans, and moved my life into his home. That's when the okay started to turn into not okay. Slowly, subtly at first, Sarah and Tom's attitudes towards me shifted. It wasn't overnight, but a gradual erosion of any goodwill we might have built. It began with small things, ignoring me when I spoke, eye-rolling when I offered an opinion, leaving their dishes for me to clean despite a chore chart we'd all agreed upon. I tried to talk to Mark about it, gently at first. He'd sigh, run a hand through his hair and say, "They're just teenagers, honey, and they miss their mom. Give them time." I understood that, truly I did. Grief is complex, but it felt like more than just grief. It felt like deliberate disrespect. I started noticing patterns. If Mark was around, they'd be marginally better, but the moment he left for work, or even just stepped out of the room, I became invisible, or worse, the target of their passive aggression. They'd complain about the food I cooked, despite me asking them repeatedly what they liked. They'd leave their laundry in a pile in the living room, knowing I'd eventually cave and wash it because I couldn't stand the mess. School projects, permission slips, forgotten sports equipment. It all became my responsibility, with no please or thank you, just an expectation. I was essentially running the household, managing their schedules, cooking, cleaning, and driving them everywhere, while also working a demanding full-time job myself. Mark worked long hours, and I truly wanted to support him and his family. I was spending my own money on their clothes, school supplies, snacks, even replacing their lost phones, because Mark was always stretched thin financially, and I felt it was my role now. My own savings were dwindling, being poured into a household where I felt increasingly unappreciated. I tried to bond with them. I suggested movie nights, board game evenings, trips to the mall. Sarah would usually decline with a curt, "I'm busy," or "I have plans," usually involving her phone in her room. Tom would sometimes participate, but he always seemed distant, his eyes on his console or phone, even when we were supposedly spending time together. It felt like I was constantly trying to bridge a gap they had no interest in closing. One particularly frustrating evening, I had spent hours preparing their favorite meal, homemade lasagna. Mark was working late, and I thought it would be a nice surprise. They came home, glanced at the table, and Sarah immediately said, "Oh, lasagna again. Can't we ever have anything decent?" Tom just grunted and headed for the fridge, grabbing a bag of chips. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. I tried to keep my voice even. "Sarah, I spent a lot of time making this, and you both said you liked it." She rolled her eyes. "Yeah, like a month ago. Tastes like cardboard now." My temper, usually well controlled, flared a little. "You know what? If you don't want it, don't eat it. But don't disrespect the effort I put in." Tom chimed in then, munching his chips. "She just doesn't know how to cook like Mom did." That stung. It stung deeply. I knew they missed their mother, but every comparison felt like a deliberate jab, a way to remind me I was an outsider, an inadequate replacement. I walked away from the table, my appetite gone, and called Mark, trying to explain how difficult things were. He was tired, stressed, and just said, "I'll talk to them tomorrow, honey. Just try to ignore it." But ignoring it was becoming impossible. It wasn't just the emotional toll. It was the financial one too. I was paying for everything. Their extracurricular activities, new sneakers, concert tickets they begged for, school trips, my salary, which used to go towards my own savings and occasional treats for myself, was now being funneled into keeping their lives afloat and comfortable, while I often felt like I was running on fumes. I remember looking at my bank account statement one day, seeing the significant dip, and feeling a pang of resentment. I was supporting them, but they treated me like a servant. The breaking point arrived on a Saturday morning. I had planned a rare day off for myself, hoping to finally get some rest. But the moment I woke up, Sarah was at my bedroom door, demanding I drive her and Tom to the mall. "Mom used to take us whenever we wanted," she said, her voice dripping with expectation. "And we need new clothes for Jessica's party." I explained that I had plans, that I was tired, and that they could ask Mark when he got home from his early shift. Sarah scoffed. "Dad's always busy. You're here. You're supposed to do this kind of stuff." Tom, who had appeared behind her, added, "Yeah, you're just here to take care of us. It's your job, my job." That phrase hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. It wasn't said in anger, but in a matter-of-fact tone, as if it were an undeniable truth. They truly believed it. My mind flashed back to every ignored thank you, every eye roll, every dirty dish, every financial contribution. I looked at their entitled faces, their hands on their hips, waiting for me to comply. And that's when I heard myself say, with a calm that surprised even me, "Oh, really? So, I exist to pay and not to parent, to serve and not to be loved, to provide without respect." They looked at me blankly, a flicker of surprise in their eyes that quickly turned back to stubbornness. Sarah shrugged. "Well, yeah, that's what Dad says too. That you help out a lot." Tom nodded in agreement. Help out a lot. The words felt like daggers. I was helping out while carrying the entire burden. That was the exact moment the decision crystallized in my mind. It was as if a switch flipped. I looked at them, and it wasn't anger I felt, but a profound sadness and a cold, hard resolve. I thought about all the times I had tried, all the effort I had put in, all the love I had offered, only to be reduced to a utilitarian function, and for them to confirm it so blithely. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have sucked it up, tried harder, or would you have drawn a line in the sand? I genuinely want to know what you would have done. I took a deep breath. All right, I said, my voice still eerily calm. If that's truly what you believe, that my existence here is solely to be your personal chauffeur and ATM, then I understand completely. I walked to the kitchen, grabbed my car keys from the hook. Get your bags. Pack everything you'll need for a few days. Sarah and Tom exchanged confused glances. What are you talking about? Sarah asked. Where are we going? We're going to your dad's, I replied, feeling a strange sense of liberation mixed with the heartache. He's coming home from work in about an hour, but it seems you two need a clearer understanding of who does what around here. If I'm just here to pay and provide, then I suppose your dad can take over those duties for a while. Their faces went from confusion to shock, then to outrage. You can't do that, Tom exclaimed. This is our house. No, Tom, I corrected him. This is Mark's house, and it was my home too, where I thought I was building a family. But if I'm just a resource to be exploited, then I think it's time for that resource to be redeployed. I watched as they slowly, reluctantly went to pack. They were grumbling, whispering about how unfair I was, how mean I was, but they were packing. I called Mark on my way out to the car. Hey, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm bringing the kids to your office. They have something important to discuss with you. He sounded bewildered. What? Why? What's going on? You'll see, I told him, then hung up before he could argue. I drove Sarah and Tom, silent and sullen in the back seat, straight to Mark's office. When we arrived, I didn't even get out of the car. I just unbuckled my seatbelt, turned to them, and handed Sarah a small wad of cash. Enough for a few days of necessities. Here's your payment for the next few days, I said, my voice devoid of emotion. And tell your dad that since I'm merely here to pay and not to parent, I'm taking a leave of absence from all parenting duties. He can handle the finances and the driving. If you need anything, ask him. They stared at me, dumbfounded. I think for the first time, they realized I wasn't joking. Now, go on, I urged them, pointing towards the office building. Your dad's waiting. I'm sure he'll be thrilled to take on his job of paying and providing exclusively. They stumbled out of the car, their small bags clutched in their hands, looking utterly bewildered as they walked towards the building. I watched them go, a single tear tracing a path down my cheek, not of sadness, but of relief. Then I drove away. I drove to a hotel, checked myself in, and turned off my phone. I needed space. I needed silence. I needed to process what had just happened and what it meant for my relationship with Mark. Mark called me non-stop for the next 24 hours. When I finally called him back, his voice was a mixture of anger, hurt, and bewilderment. He had obviously had a very difficult conversation with his children, who were, by his account, traumatized and abandoned. I listened patiently, then calmly explained to him exactly what his children had said, word for word, and how their behavior had been escalating for months, despite my pleas for his intervention. Mark, I said, my voice firm. They told me to my face that I exist solely to pay, not to parent, and you yourself have often told me I help out a lot, reinforcing their belief. If that's the dynamic, then I'm simply aligning with their perspective. You are their father. You pay, you provide. I'm taking a break from paying and providing duties until they understand the difference between a loving partner and a financial service. There was a long silence on the other end. He finally admitted, in a quieter voice, that he hadn't realized how bad it was, that he had been so focused on work and grieving that he had probably let things slide. He promised to talk to them, really talk to them, and make them understand that I was a part of their family, not an unpaid nanny or a bank account. It took a few days and a lot of very difficult conversations between Mark and his children, and then between Mark and me, for things to even begin to shift. The kids eventually apologized, albeit grudgingly, but it was a start. They said they understood that what they said was hurtful and that I wasn't just there for their money. I didn't immediately move back in. I stayed at the hotel for another week, insisting that Mark work with his children to establish clearer boundaries and expectations. I made it clear that my role was to be a partner to him and a supportive presence for them, not a martyr. When I finally did return, things were different. Not perfect by any means. Change takes time, and old habits die hard. But there was a definite shift. The kids were more polite, less demanding. They started doing their chores without constant nagging. Sarah even occasionally asked me about my day. And Tom, on one memorable evening, actually helped me with dinner and said, "Thanks for cooking." It was a small step, but it felt monumental. It taught me a vital lesson. Sometimes you have to draw a hard line to show people, especially children, the value of what you bring to their lives, beyond the material. You can't be afraid to walk away, even for a little while, to preserve your own sanity and self-respect. This whole experience taught me so much about setting boundaries, even with the people you love. It also showed me that sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that lead to the most meaningful changes. It was painful, it was terrifying, but ultimately, it was necessary for my own well-being and, ironically, for the health of our blended family. Like this video, if you were on my side and think I did the right thing. Subscribe for more stories like this, and please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. Did I go too far? Or was it the only way to get through to them? I'll see you all in the next story.